Welcome to Dungeon Academics. My name is Thomas and I will be your instructor. In this video, I'd like to talk about the fabled Quantum Ogre, a thought experiment from Dungeons & Dragons that ties in with a famous thought experiment from physics. This is a particularly relevant subject for me because I have a degree in physics. I've been a physics teacher for many years, and the Quantum Ogre brings up two very important points I've talked about in previous videos. So I'd like to think that I'm probably the perfect person to talk about this, even if I say so myself with a huge degree of humility and modesty and British sarcasm. Sorry about that. Okay, what is the Quantum Ogre? Well, first we have to understand a bit about the famous thought experiment of Schrodinger's cat. Schrodinger's cat involves a potentially dead cat. I do apologise if you love animals, even if you don't, nobody wants a dead cat. But anyway, what you do is you take a perfectly comfortable, opaque box and you put a cat inside it. Now let's assume that there is enough food, water and oxygen to keep this cat alive indefinitely. But you also add to this box a small vial of poison, some sort of triggering mechanism and a radioactive sample. And then you seal the box shut. Now, we can assume that the cat will survive indefinitely except for the presence of the poison. And we know that over the next hour, there is a 50-50 chance that the radioactive sample will release enough radiation to set off the trigger and release the poison, thus killing the cat. We leave the experiment for 1 hour and then come back. Without opening the box, is the cat alive or dead? Well, traditional thought says it must be one of the two. There is no third state. The cat can't be half alive or half dead. If that element has decayed, which it has a 50-50 chance of doing, then that poison will have killed the cat and the cat will be dead. If the radioactive element hasn't decayed, then the poison will not have been released and the cat will be fine. So which is it? Quantum mechanics teaches us that it is possible for particles to be in a superposition, a quantum state where it can be one thing or the other, or both or neither. It's complicated, quantum mechanics is. But the idea of not knowing the state of a particle before you perform an experiment on it is a fundamental concept in quantum mechanics. And this cat being neither alive nor dead, but possibly both or maybe neither, this superposition, is an interesting thought experiment to do. Now, of course, Schrodinger's cat experiment has a lot of shortcomings because this quantum superposition only really works on particles at a quantum level. You can do it with electrons, sure, but with a cat, absolutely not. One of the problems we face with quantum mechanics is that people try to assume that phenomena that they can observe on a human scale still apply at the quantum mechanics scale, and phenomena that are observed on the quantum mechanics scale can still apply at the human scale. This is absolutely not the case. We know quantum mechanics is a very accurate description of how particles behave at the quantum level. Quantum mechanics makes predictions which have been proven to be correct time and time again experimentally, and a lot of technology utilizes quantum mechanics in even everyday technology. So quantum mechanics is definitely a very good theory with a lot of evidence behind it, and the idea of quantum superposition of particles really does apply in real life, but only on a quantum scale. So where does the Quantum Ogre come from? Well, take the role of a dungeon master and talking to your party. They're walking down a path. The path splits left and right. Which way do they choose to go? The party takes the left fork, and a mile down the road, they're ambushed by an ogre. That party can reasonably ask itself, was this ogre always waiting for us down this path? If we'd chosen the other path, would we have had plain sailing? Or would the ogre have happened to be on the right-hand path? Does this ogre exist in a superposition, only appearing on the path that you choose? There is an element of bad game design or bad level design that the Quantum Ogre shows up. You present the players with a choice. Take the left path or the right path. But irrespective of which choice they make, they have the same outcome. They're ambushed by an ogre. Even if this isn't the case, even if you have a completely different encounter or no encounter down that other path, the players have no way of knowing that and could reasonably assume that there was a Quantum Ogre waiting for them, whatever choice they made. I like to talk about choices in my videos. I have 3 principles for good choices in Dungeons & Dragons, and any game really. A choice must be impactful. The ramifications of the choice must have an effect on the game or story. A choice must be meaningful in that there's not an obvious right answer that invalidates any other choice. And a choice must be informed. You must have enough information to make a reasonable choice. The Quantum Ogre is evidence of an unreasonable choice. You have no information telling you down this path is an ogre, down that path is something else, or a clear track. The Quantum Ogre is, at best, a 50-50 choice, and at worst, an inevitability that belies false choice all from the start. So how can we avoid this problem? Well, let's bring in a second principle that I talked about. And again, this was inspired by a cybersecurity expert called Ryan Macbeth. And he, in the context of security, said, don't give your adversaries problems, because problems have solutions. Give them dilemmas. A dilemma has 2 or more paths, each of which are equally unpleasant. This is a perfect example of when you should give your players a dilemma. If there are 2 paths ahead of them, they should know that both paths will have some kind of cost. And then they can choose the one that they want to pay. And you should also give your players enough information that they might have a clue on what this path is. If you show your players 2 paths and say one path is dimly lit, smells of rotten meat, and has bones scattered along it, but the other path is bright, cheerful, lined with flowers, and you can hear the sweet songs of birds, then you're telling your players that one path is easy and one path is difficult. Now, if your players have been told to hunt down a tribe of ogres, then they have a reasonable guess of which path they should take. Perhaps this is not a meaningful choice. There's an obvious best and worst solution, irrespective of whether they want to find the ogres or not. If they're looking to get from A to B quickly and easily, don't take the horrible, dimly lit, meat-filled path. But if you want to find the ogres, that's probably where they are. So this isn't a meaningful choice. It's too obvious. What can we do that's better? Well, present your players a choice and give them clues as to what's down both choice and what it will cost them. If you tell them that down one path there are bones, the smell of rotting meat, and the grumbling sound of something very large talking, you are signposting there's probably ogres down here and you're looking at a combat encounter. If the players make a successful survival check, they might be able to count footprints and work out how many ogres there are, or some other clues of information. The other path, you could indicate that there might be some traps along the way. And I've said that traps should not be completely bypassable. There should always be a cost to going through traps. Now, sure, if you can disarm some traps, you lower that cost, or perhaps you can mitigate the cost for a number of players. You know, if a rogue is successful in disarming a trap, maybe 1 or 2 players can get through without taking any damage, but the rest may. this means there is still a cost associated with that path. If you make it so that a path has no cost, then that is obviously the best path to take. So you've presented your players a choice, a potential combat encounter against an enemy that they have a little bit of information about, or a series of traps, which will cost them some damage, but they may have the possibility to get 1 or 2 players through without taking an excessive amount of damage. The players can now choose which path to take. They have enough information to make an informed choice. Now, they don't necessarily have all the information. They can't theory craft right away and go, well, we could beat this tribe of ogres with a very low resource cost, so this is going to be the easiest path. They have to balance a potential combat encounter against the potential loss of hit points or infliction of statuses from a series of partially unavoidable traps. This is now a good choice. It's definitely going to be impactful because it will cost them irrespective of which path they take. There's not an obvious right answer, but they have enough information to make some informed choices about. If they are full of resources and willing to fight a pack of ogres, go for it. On the other hand, if they're low on resources but have a rogue with them, maybe the traps, if they can sneak that sorcerer on 4 hit points through before the traps reset, that's probably the better path. But again, it's not perfectly clear. There's still this unknown about what could happen, about what the dice will show. So there's not an obvious right answer, but they have enough information to make a choice. We can get rid of the Quantum Ogre, but you need to give your players enough information to tell them that both paths have a cost associated with them. I think this is the best way to play Dungeons and Dragons. You give your players choices that they can agonize about, that they can feel good or bad about the results. The Quantum Ogre takes choice away by presenting meaningless choice or false choice. If there's gonna be a fight with an ogre, irrespective of what they choose, giving them a choice just makes the game feel cheap. On the other hand, by correctly balancing the options, you can have great gameplay moments. So, those are my thoughts. How can we get rid of the Quantum Ogre? By better choices and by giving the players dilemmas rather than problems. I'd like to hear what you think about this. I mean, a lot of content creators have talked about the Quantum Ogre and they've got some great solutions on how to deal with it. This is just my take. Hopefully I can add something to the pool, and hopefully you've learned a little bit of physics in the process as well, because anytime you can play Dungeons and Dragons and learn some physics as well, that's got to be a great day. Anyway, great to have you here, and enjoy your next game, whatever it may be.